Today's topic is basically diseases, a very common topic. Different diseases that affect human beings, right? And of course, you're going to be, anybody wants to take a try on the chat of the different types of diseases, just call one disease off the top of your head on the chat, right? One person said HIV, have cancer, have STDs, and have diabetes. Diabetes is going to be a real big discussion because it's very, very popular on the syllabus, okay? And of course, COVID-19, right? We cannot forget that one. That's probably the most recent one, okay? All right, now the antagonist of the story is going to be this guy called Jibby. And well, Jibby is going to kind of guide us through the topic. Anybody knows someone like this? Somebody who thinks they know everything, but they're not an expert in the topic. And they like to tell everybody what the correct thing is when they themselves don't know the correct thing. I personally know a lot of people like that. All right. So I'm going to have a little fun with this guy called Jimmy, who is representing that person that we all know, right? That pavement doctor who knows nothing but wants you to take his advice, okay? So let's move on, right? Let's see what GB takes us into. So the name of the, sorry, let me write the name of the topic. The name of the topic is diseases. I hope I spelled it correct. So write that to the top of your books. Now, there's going to be a part of class like now where there's no writing. I don't want you to write anything. How my lectures are, we're going to have a portion of the class that's totally for discussion. And discussion is very important. This is the part where you take part in class, throw your opinions on the chat, and by talking about it, you will better understand the topic and, of course, memorize the notes better. So right now, put down your pens and pencils. No writing is to take place. So let's talk and discuss. So on the board here, we have a guy, right? His name is Tommy. Tommy is this muscular guy over here, right? He looks fit, right? And Tommy comes up to Jibby. This is Jibby here, in case you all don't remember. He's going to be very popular. And take a look at what he's saying to Tommy. Tommy, take it from me. You are strong and fit. And all your blood tests, apparently he went to do blood tests and whatnot, and all the blood tests came back good. And Jibby is advising his friend Tommy that he is healthy. All right. So what we can gather from what Jibby is saying here, health, once you are physically healthy, I'm not talking about just strength and muscles and whatnot. All his blood tests came back good. So let's say all his cholesterol is good. The doctor checked his heart, his kidneys, you know, and everything came back good. Does this necessarily mean that Tommy is healthy? Let's hear your opinions on it. Send it on the chat, on the Zoom chat, on the YouTube chat, right? There's a small chance that Tommy, not a small chance, there's something Jibby is overlooking. What is Jibby overlooking? Can you tell me what Jibby doesn't know, right? You see, Jibby doesn't know the definition of health. Jibby just thinks being physically healthy is enough. But health also refers to mental health, and I'm going to remove the question mark just now, and also social health. Mental health, most people might be familiar with that term, right? Because there are a lot of mental conditions, and mental conditions are not caused by a bacteria or a virus or high cholesterol. It's not caused by something physical. It's basically your state of mind. And if your state of mind is not good, then you are not healthy. Also, social health, which is part of mental health, but we could view it separate today, is also part of health. For example, you know, sometimes there's someone who doesn't mingle with anybody. You might have seen it in school or for the adults who are in work. You know, there's some people, I know a few people too, who just do not talk to other people. They are just by themselves. They don't actually know how to mingle or how to talk to other people, and they're scared of doing it, right? And they keep to themselves. They don't socialize, okay? That is actually not healthy. And let's remove the question mark. And let's see if I could summarize everything here, right? I don't need you to take down this. You see, what Jibby is missing out is that he never considered Tommy's mental health. And these are some conditions here of mental health. Some people are bipolar. Depression is a huge mental health issue. Depression, I don't know if you all know anybody who is depressed, right? They're always down. They don't have a lot of energy. They don't feel like doing anything. How much people suffer from anxiety? Like if you have a test, I'm not talking about you have minor butterflies in your stomach. I'm talking about you freak out, like you physically can't function, you freeze up. And there are a lot of people like that. If you suffer from that sort of anxiety, you are considered not healthy. That's a health issue. All your blood tests could come back good. You could be strong. You can run a full marathon. You can do 100 push-ups. But if you suffer from something as anxiety, you're not considered fully healthy. Some people have eating disorders. Some people eat too much. Some people eat too little bit, and they become anorexic. And this one, anybody can tell me what OCD is? I particularly know this one because I suffer from a slight form of this. What is OCD? Nobody knows what OCD, right? Not cleaning disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder. Let me explain what OCD is. For example, when you're leaving your house, right? Well, for me, I'll give you a true story. I will make about 4 checks to make sure all the pipes are off, all the air conditions are off, all electrical plugs are off. And I have to do it over and over and over. Obsessive is when you're obsessed with something and you do it over and over and over. And you think by doing it more than once, it makes it safer than it was before. But you're just obsessed with doing the same thing over and over. It could happen with people cleaning. I know some people who clean also. They will clean 5 minutes and then 10 minutes later, they clean again, and they just can't stop doing it, okay? So if you suffer from any of these mental illnesses, you are not 100% healthy. And also not being social, right? Not being social, right? Like I said, and there are plenty of reasons psychologists have realized that some people don't socialize with other people, right? They may have been bullied when they were younger, so they're afraid to talk to someone because they're afraid that if they talk to that person, they'll get bullied again. Some people have overprotective parents, so if you're too overprotective, that child will never get a chance to go out in the world and interact with other people. So when it's time to actually go out in the world and interact with other people, they don't know how to do it, right? And well, number 3, sometimes something bad happens in public and that memory just sticks in your head and you can't get it out of your head. So you're free to socialize, okay? So here's what I need for you all to do, right? For notes, just for the time being, I need you to take down only what I am putting in this rectangle here. Take down some examples of mental illness, right? And what could probably cause someone to not socialize. Everybody think they understand health a little better now. Like they understand health is not just about blood tests and being strong and having no diseases, right? So the name of the topic is diseases, right? For those who came in late. Right, and guys, I'm gonna already ask for those who coming in late, try not to come into class late, because when you come into class late, you ask a whole set of questions that was already discussed, and it's not fair to the rest of the students or me. Class starts at 9, try to be here about 5 minutes before 9, settle in, and be ready for class. All right, so here we have some definitions of health and disease, right? Now, before you take it down, right? Now, on the side here, right? For the top, this is what I want you to put at the top of the page. You're writing this down as the heading. Now, not all the time, whatever I have in the gray box here is the heading. Pay attention to exactly what you need to write down. Put this as the heading at the top of the page, because in the exam, for 2 marks, right, they could ask you to define what health is and what a disease is, right? Remember, health and disease is not the same thing. Disease can cause a health issue. So disease is the cause of whether you are healthy or not healthy. And if you read the definition for health, you will see they will say physical, mental, and social. That is what we just discussed. Health is not only about physical. And I use a fancy word here, and I know most people might not know what this word means. So take it down, right? Infirmity means physical or mental weakness, right? If you are not mentally strong too, I'm not talking about physical strong, right? If you're not mentally strong, you're not considered healthy. And well, I think a disease, a disease doesn't always have to be an infection. A disease could be the manifestation of your mind, like anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. All of those things are considered disease. The point is, I want you to get out of your mind that all diseases are caused by bacteria or viruses. A disease could be a mental issue as well. Take down everything here as well. Learn off the definitions by heart for the examiner, because it will most likely come for your exam, right? So someone asked about panic attacks. Well, remember, your panic attacks will come from suffering from anxiety. So a panic attack comes from anxiety. So anxiety is really the condition, and the panic attack is the result of that condition. So panic attacks will fall under anxiety. All right, let's see what's next. Here we have a little cut scene here with Genie Alu. All right, so for those who know this, what will happen? The genie will grant you, will give you the opportunity to win something. Let's see what we have the opportunity to win. How much of you all think that's a good prize? You'll be able to live to almost 200 years and be healthy to that age. All right, I think that's a good, well, I mean, once you're healthy, I'll be happy to live to that age, right? All right, so let's see what we have to do in order to win this prize. I want everyone on a piece of paper, and of course you can send it on the chat too, to spell their favorite country in Europe. Like if you had to go live in a country in Europe for the rest of your life, what country would that be? For me, it would be, I would prefer to go Germany, right? I really like Germany, but you don't have to choose what I'm doing. So make sure you can spell it, because you have to be able to spell it in order to get the prize. Right? Think about it. It has to be one word, right? Somebody said Denmark. I never thought about that. Denmark is pretty nice. from the pictures I've seen. I've never went. All right. So here's what I want you to do now. The country that you picked, count how much letters it has. So I chose Germany. So it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So for me, Germany has 7 letters. But so for the country you pick, count how much letters it has. Take a few seconds. All right, 6 letters. Some people said 6 letters, mine 1 is 7. Now look what's going to happen, right? If that number appears in the jar, you win the prize. So let's see what happens here. Let's see what the jar of truth says.
Let us see what the jar of truth says.
If anybody had any of those numbers, 5, 6, or 7, I win the prize because to tell you the truth, I'm not cheating. I did this so long ago. I'm just doing it blindly like you guys. If you chose Portugal, you do not win. Portugal has 8, I believe, not 7. Portugal. Yeah, Portugal is 8. All right. So anybody won? Let me know on the chat. Of course, YouTube as well. Let me know. All right. So every once in a while, the genie will appear to relieve the little stress or boredom in class. Okay. Let's move on, guys. Let's move on. All right. So here's another thing, right? So let's see what this guy Jimmy is up to now. Remember, kids, diseases causes health issues. Diseases are basically tiny bacteria and viruses, which are the same thing. All right. Well, a good few things here are wrong. You all should already know this. Let me mention over and over. A disease doesn't have to be caused by a bacteria or a virus. It could be a manifestation of the mind, okay? And anybody can tell me what else is wrong, and some of you all are telling me already, other than the fact that we know diseases could be caused by the manifestation of the mind. What else is GB saying wrong? He's saying something totally wrong again. And some of you all remember from the last time we met about 2 weeks ago. He is telling these 2 kids here that bacteria and a virus is the same thing. He's obviously out of it, right? Because a bacteria and a virus is not the same, okay? In biology, they are considered 2 different things. In fact, bacteria is considered to be alive and a virus is not alive. Believe it or not, a virus, by the definition of life, which we will eventually get to, is not alive. Bacteria is alive. So let's remove this question mark here. Right. So other than that, right, when we're talking about diseases, we can actually break up diseases into 2 categories, 2 major categories, right? Other than those caused by, instead of saying health issues and whatnot, we could break it up into a different type of category. Communicable, right? If a disease is communicable, right? Sorry, I'm a little tight tongue, excuse me, right? Feel free to laugh, it doesn't matter, right? So these are diseases caused by a bacteria or virus, which means, right, at the end of the day, it's this. If somebody has this type of disease, if you stand close to them or their blood gets into your blood, they can transfer the disease to you, right? So you notice I have a little diagram of a bacteria or a virus. This is a germ at the end of the day. How much of you all agree that all of these diseases can be spread if you stand too close to that person or if their blood gets into your blood, right? Do me a favor, guys. Don't raise your hands in class. When you raise your hands, it blocks the screen a little bit. right? So just answer on the chat, right? Do me that small favor, right? And we all, especially, we know about COVID-19, right? Somebody sneezes on you. If somebody, for God forgive, they wipe their nose and they give you a high five, right? Of course, the diseases will be spread to you, right? Now, the opposite of communicable is non-communicable, obviously. Things like cancer and a stroke. Well, some of y'all may not know what number 3 and number 4 is, but at least we know for cancer. And you could shake someone's hand who has cancer or hug up someone who has cancer. Will you get cancer? No. If somebody has a stroke, I said stroke, but it'll be S-T-R-O-K-E. Sorry about that, Miss Mallory, right? If somebody has a stroke and you are next to them or you're taking care of them, you're not going to get the stroke because those things are not caused by bacteria or viruses, or better known as your germs, right? Those are non-communicable. All right. So I want everyone to take down this. Some examples of communicable and non-communicable. Right. Right. Oh, well, we have a lot of work to do in integrated science, right? So you see things like sickle cell disease. That's a very long explanation, but as we go on into integrated science and HSB, we have to explain this in detail. Scurvy is pretty easy to explain. Scurvy is when you don't eat enough vitamin C and your gums start to blister and your teeth and things start to fall out. Pirates usually suffered from that from the 18th century, because when you're on a pirate ship, you don't have much sources of vitamin C. You have no fresh fruits, something on the sea. So sailors will develop this thing called scurvy. The teeth and gums, something will blister up, fall out, all kind of madness, right? But for the time being, just know 4 examples of non-communicable diseases. And later on, we will explain in detail what 3 and 4 is, right? And malaria is someone asked what malaria is. That is a disease spread by mosquitoes. In fact, malaria is the #1 killer on planet Earth. More people die of malaria than any other disease on the planet, right? For those who didn't know, that's the #1 killer on the planet. Right. All right, so the next slide, you're not going to like it, but you have to write everything on it, right? So, right, well, we're going to go through like some more examples in more detail, right, of communicable and non-communicable. We have 4 categories here, right? So I want everyone to put this to the top of your page, classifying diseases. And wait on me, you're not writing yet. Let's talk a little bit first. Let's talk a little bit. Right? It's not a good idea to write while, I'm talking, because you'll miss certain things, and discussion is good for remembering. Right? All right. So I think we pretty much understand what a communicable disease is, right? It can be in a little more detail. If something is communicable, it can be spread by germs, and of course, this here is a little more detail. It can be spread by a bacteria or a virus or even a parasite or fungi, right? Like, some people just have, well, it's kind of gross, right? On your toes, just get infected. And then just have this kind of, not blister, but this kind of fungus growing in their toenails and whatnot, right? That's actually a type of fungi. And of course, if you touch that and you put it on your toes, you will get it also, right? It's pretty gross, right? But that's an example of a fungi infection that's communicable, because if you touch it, it can easily spread to you, right? Now, there are actually, look at the symbols. Wherever you see this symbol, it is a communicable disease. If you see the one with the cross, that means it's a non-communicable disease. And there are 3 general examples of diseases that are non-communicable. right? So let's read through this one, the second one. Non-communicable disease are not caused by infectious agents. So they're already trying to say it's not caused by bacteria or parasites or bacteria and whatnot, right? And a generic, well, this is technical terms there for something bad. They usually cause something bad to happen. And they are often linked to lifestyles rather than a bacteria, such as diet, physical activity, smoking, alcohol consumption, as well genetic and environmental factors. So if something is non-communicable, it cannot be caused by germs, but something else will be causing it. For example, if somebody is smoking, like they're a chronic smoker, right? You know how much diseases that can develop with smoking. You can get cancer. If you have asthma, it can make it worse. You can have breathing problems. If someone who is a smoker, well, let's assume they're not smoking a cigarette at the moment, and they come next to you and hug you up, will you get lung cancer? Will you get asthma, right? No, because those things are non-communicable. Alcohol consumption. If a person drinks too much alcohol, they can get liver damage and all of those things. But that cannot spread to you. So it's classified as non-communicable. What about nutritional deficiency? If a person doesn't eat properly and doesn't get the amount of vitamins and minerals, for example, remember we did one just called scurvy. What vitamin do we need to prevent scurvy from happening? I said it when I was talking a few minutes ago. Scurvy, what vitamin is necessary to prevent this thing called scurvy that makes your gums bleed and your teeth fall out? Right, it's vitamin C. If a person, let's say one of your best friends, has decided to give up vitamin C for whatever strange, crazy reason, and he develops scurvy because he refused to eat the vitamin C, if you stand up next to him, will you get scurvy? No. He brought that upon himself, right? He brought that upon himself, and that cannot be transferred to you, right? So I gave you some examples here of things that are caused by nutritional deficiencies. Scurvy, you will not know what rickets is as yet, but most of you all will know what anemia is. That's when you have an iron deficiency and you begin to feel cold and weak, right? So a lot of people suffer from this thing called anemia. Of course, I will discuss all of those things in detail. Also, inherited disorders. Sometimes you go to the doctor, right? And they ask you if something runs in the family. Like, for example, if your family, like your grandparents and your parents, right, have a history of heart disease, you might develop what? Heart disease as well. But does that affect your friend? Let's say your whole family, from grandfather to father, and you now develop heart disease because it's genetic in your family. If your friend hangs out with you, is that going to affect him? Can that be transferred to him? The answer is no, right? So inherited disorders, meaning that it's passed down from generation to generation, is not communicable, right? Things like, well, like I said, you all may not know what these types of diseases are. For the time being, learn them off, and later on, I have to discuss all of them in detail. Everyone think they understand it so far? Like, you have a decent idea of now of the clear difference between communicable and the three examples of non-communicable, and you think you could state some of them for the examiner if they were to ask? Great. Take down everything on the screen, right? And what I like to tell students, right? Well, when you're taking down notes, don't take it down all, however. Have some pride in your notes. The neater you take it down, the more you're going to memorize it, okay? And you will get to practice this when we start to do past paper questions. I like to start my past paper questions earlier. As soon as we finish a full topic, we're going to do questions on it. So it will help you memorize the notes better. So if you just understand, let's say 60 to 70% of what went on, that's good enough for the time being. My job is to repeat it over and over and help you practice it so it sticks in your head 100% before the exam. Right? Right, so someone asks what a pathogen is. A pathogen is a disease, sorry, a microorganism disease. A pathogen is like a germ. That's a fancy word for a germ or a bacteria or something like that. That's just a fancy word, pathogen. Right. Technology is wonderful. It has so much backup plans for this scenario. Right, just to clarify, you're taking down everything on the screen. Examples are super important. The examiner will ask you for examples. So if I give you examples, you need to take it down as well. Let's move on. Great. All right, so let's see what prize this genie is going to offer us this time. All right. This is not bad. This is not bad. So he's going to grant us a chain of coffee shops, right? That could be pretty successful, like Starbucks or like Rituals, right? So let's see what you have to do here. Look at the letter below. What word do you think that is? Once you could guess that word. I don't know if I made this too easy. Oh, I think I made it too easy. Everybody is getting this out. I should have taken out 3 letters, you know. I was telling myself, Lord. All right. You all get me. You all get your chain of coffee shops. Hope you're sharing that money.
Let us see what the jar of truth says.
All right, so it is pancakes. Lord. Next time I'll make it harder. It's because I have problems spelling. Simple words seem hard to me. If somebody would have given me that, I would probably gotten it wrong. I sure Miss told you about that I'm horrible at spelling and English. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so I like this one here. This is something a lot of people confuse, right? So here we have Jibi's poor grandfather. Unfortunately, he's related to Jibi, which is why he's probably having a heart attack in the first place. All right, so he says, hey, Jibi, do you know the signs of a heart attack? And of course, Jibi just begins to ramble his normal nonsense. He says, chest pain. Do you have nausea? Do you have fatigue? Do you have dizziness? Those are the signs of a heart attack. But he wasn't listening properly to his grandfather, right? He said signs. You see, there's 2 words that a lot of people misinterpret. There's one called signs and one called symptoms. Now, to the average Joe, right, at first glance, right, for a person who doesn't do or who isn't familiar with biology and whatnot, you might think signs and symptoms are basically the same thing, right? Because if you were to replace the word signs with symptoms, I'm pretty sure Jibby would have said the same exact thing because Jibby doesn't know the difference between the word signs and symptoms. All right. Let's see if there is a difference. Jibby seems to be mixing up the word sign and symptoms. Simpsons. Sorry, I was watching an episode of Simpsons earlier this morning. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Signs can be directly measured or recorded. So a sign can basically, if you have an instrument, you can measure it or detect it. Chest pain. Do you think that there's a machine out there that when you go generally, you go to the doctor's office, if a person says, oh, I have chest pain, is there an instrument to measure the amount of chest pain? Like your chest pain is 4. It has nothing like that, right? There's no instrument. You see, pain is, it depends on how the patient reported. And different people have different tolerances. A hard, sharp pain to you might not, the same pain, I just say if it were to be transferred to another person, might not hurt as much. You see, signs, right, are usually reported by the patient, and it cannot be directly measured. Things like tiredness, but fatigue means tiredness, or dizziness, or nausea. Those things cannot be measured by an instrument. I mean, the patient could say, I'm feeling nauseous, or I'm feeling tired, but they can't give you a value on it. Symptoms is the opposite, okay? I say Simpsons again, sorry. Symptoms can be directly measured. For example, someone's temperature. I mean, if somebody say they have a fever, right? The word fever is a little bit, it belongs to both categories. If a person says they have a fever and they say they're feeling warm, but they didn't measure yourself, they didn't measure it as yet, right? I guess it could be a sign. But if you take the thermometer now and measure that temperature, that fever, the temperature of the fever, and let's say it's 39, well, that fever could be directly measured. So I would consider fever a symptom because to me, it could be what? Measured, right? If somebody has toxins in their blood, couldn't you take a blood test and measure the amount of toxins? For those who ever took a blood test, you just get a report saying you have this amount of toxins in your body. So think if you have toxins in your body, that's a symptom because you can directly what? Measure it. Don't worry, I'm going to go into more detail just now about signs and symptoms. Take down everything I just circled. Just for the time being, just take down that, right? Right, so that's how I'm going to read through my. I said it wrong side, but I have the correcting on the screen here. I have the correcting on the screen, right? Signs is the one that can be measured. My mistake. I don't know why I was saying the wrong thing. Right? And symptoms is the one that cannot be recorded, right? So if someone's, so in other words, let me just clear it up here. What GB is saying here, things like chest pain, nausea, fatigue, and dizziness, are those signs or symptoms? Somebody say Jibby going to my head. Right? These are symptoms, right? So, all right. Oh boy, Joshua, the amount of messages that came up while you sent that joke. I couldn't read it in time. About 100 messages came up. It's quite up into the atmosphere right now. All right, but I'm sure the joke was good. All right, so here, right, which makes sense with the comic strip, right? Because his grandfather was asking for signs, and obviously Jibby has to say the wrong thing. So he listed symptoms instead. right? So for all those on Zoom and for all those on YouTube, I humbly apologize. All right, let's move on. All right, so here are some more examples. This is the more detailed one, right? Right, and of course, we need to learn this off for the exams. This is nothing different to what I was saying earlier, right? The symptoms is the one that cannot be measured. That is when the patient comes into the office and he begins to ramble. And the doctor just begins to roll his eyes in his head, waiting for you to stop rambling. So he could actually tell you what the problem is. All right. So things like headache, nausea, we've been through all the pain, anything with pain, that's definitely a symptom. You can't measure these things, right? Signs are the things you can directly measure. Blood pressure. How much of you all have parents who suffer from high blood pressure or family who suffers from high blood pressure? Remember, there's this machine you can wrap around your arms and it will directly tell you the value of your blood pressure. So you can measure what? The blood pressure. Swollen lymph nodes. Some people might not know what a lymph node is. I don't know if you all ever notice this, but if you get a really bad fever, you ever feel underneath your armpits, it feels swollen? You see, and by feeling the lymph, you see lymph nodes as something physical, you could feel it. And of course, you could feel how much it swell. So that is something you can actually see with your eyes, right? A rash. Well, if you see a rash, you can make out the pattern of the rash. You could see how big the rash is. So that will fall under what? Signs, okay? Now, the itching part of the rash, if you tell the doctor the rash is itching, the words itching would fall under symptoms because you really can't describe in words how much itching you have. But the size of the rash or the type of rash, that could be directly measured and observed, okay? Right. The fever, remember, you could always measure a fever with a thermometer to give you an idea of how high it is. And your sound, you can measure your heart, the amount of beats per second. That can be directly measured. A value can be put on that. So take down this as the heading and then take down everything on the screen. Sorry, guys, I know it's a long note and I know it's a lot of writing, but this is how HSB and integrated science is. It's just a lot of notes. You can't get away from it. So 5 minutes, let me know when you are finished, okay? All right, so I hope you all get a small break here, a little cutscene here with that genie, right? Oh, sorry. Oh, there's one particular question that comes over and over in the exam. So I prepared a special answer for this one. You see, sometimes they will ask you for the difference between a sign and a symptom. Now, I know you all know the difference between a sign and a symptom by now, right? But it is given a small space to summarize your answer. And this is exactly what I want you to write in the exams, right? Right? That's all. I'm wanting to scratch off here. That's not one thing to scratch off. I suppose there's one thing here. Don't take it down, right? Right. You don't need to take down this part here. Take down everything else, right? If they ask you to summarize it in the exam and they give you the small space to write your answer, this is exactly what you're writing for the examiner to tell them what's the difference between a sign and a symptom, because you're not going to have a big space to write your answer. Let me know when you are finished. Right? That should take more than 20 seconds, right? Yeah. All right, I like these cartoons. Let's see what he's going to give us now. This isn't a bad gift. This is actually a very convenient gift. If you could see 5 minutes into the future, I think it'd be amazing things you could do, right? You could buy a lottery ticket 5 minutes before it actually draws, right? Right. So I find this is a pretty cool gift once used properly. Anyway, let's see what this genie is about. It have three things. Now, oh, I like this one. Imagine that you are thrown overboard. So usually imagine it's nighttime and you're at sea and you get thrown aboard off a ship and you're left on your own. So the boat leaves you. It's the middle of the night. The place is dark. Pretty scary, right? Think of the scariest creature other than a shark, so not a shark, that can bump into your leg. Tell me what that creature is. A real creature, right? No sci-fi creatures, please. Somebody said a dolphin. How could that be the scariest thing? That would be the best thing to bump your leg. Right? Think about it. Think about it. Not a shark. Not a shark. We said not a shark. All right. So let's see who gets it correct. Let's see what the jar of truth says. Did anyone say jellyfish? If it was jellyfish, you win the prize. To me, it would be a jellyfish. I don't want a jellyfish to bump into my leg. Dolphins are okay. I have no problem with the dolphin. That's the best case scenario. Right? Right. Someone said piranha. Piranhas don't live in the ocean. That's a river fish. All right. Killer whales was second on my list, but I didn't put it over there. All right, guys. Let's move on. It's all fun. If you didn't win, you didn't win. Maybe next time. All right. So this one here is something I know a lot of people misinterpret. The word inflammation. How much of you all have seen those? I'm using these cheesy commercials where they try to sell medication and they say the medication prevents inflammation and they just get this doctor to talk on their behalf. Oh God, it's terrible. It's really terrible. Okay. But if you ask the average person what inflammation is, they know it's something bad. In fact, you're going to realize inflammation is not actually bad all the times. Inflammation is just bad sometimes. But they like to use these buzzwords, inflammation, and immediately everybody just stands up and says, hey, inflammation, that is bad. Let's get rid of it. But ask them what inflammation is. They don't know, right? So let's hear what our old pal Jimmy has to say about this. Inflammation is any burning sensation in the body because inflammation resembles the word flame. It has the word like kind of flame in it. So you associate the word with burning. But this is not actually true, right? So let's see what inflammation is. But before you read all of that madness above the lady's head there, let me talk a little bit. Anybody can tell me what this is? Let me get a different color here. That's really hard to see. Well, what is this circular thing here? Well, what is that? Right? Remember, we love Jimmy. Okay, a lot of people are saying cell. I want to know what kind of cell. To keep it simple, right? This is a white blood cell. I had discussed this about 2 weeks ago when we first met, right? For that sample class, right? Anybody can remember what the white blood cell does? Yeah, your body has millions of these. What does a white blood cell do? It fights off germs. It fights off infections. You see, your white blood cells are like your soldiers. And I'm going to attempt to spell a word that I misspell wrong 50% of the time. So you're going to let me know if it's wrong. S-O-I-L. I don't know if that's correct or the I is supposed to be after. Who knows, right? But your white blood cells are like the soldiers in your body. Whenever there's an invader, coming into your body, a bacteria, a virus, something that the body doesn't want, right? Your white blood cells will defend your body And if spelled correctly, hopefully one day I will spell it correct. So the right. Thank you guys. I don't even know why I bothered to spell it. All right. So your white blood cells will defend you. So let's look at this lady here. Let's say she has an infection in her throat, right? So let's say she has a cold or some sort of sore throat or whatnot. What will happen? Your white blood cells and all the chemicals they produce, do you think they should visit this area? Well, what do you all think? If this area has an infection, do you think it's a good idea for your soldiers, your white blood cells, to show up at that point? And I think the answer would be yes. So what will happen in your blood, right? Well, the white blood cells travel in your blood. So they will hop onto the little river, better known as your bloodstream, and all of them would flow to this area. And that is good because they come to fight off whatever infection it have in that area. Do you think that area will get bigger or smaller? That circled area, if all the white blood cells rush to that point, it's obviously going to get bigger because you have more things in here. Remember, you have a whole set of white blood cells in this area. And plus, the blood has been, some of your blood in your body has been redirected to go to the throat area. Because if the more blood flows to your throat area, then more white blood cells could travel in the blood and reach there. So this area will get bigger, better known as swollen, right? You'll notice this, I'm sure. If you get an infection in a certain area, like on your knee, won't your knee swell? That's actually a good thing, you know. That means the blood has been redirected to your knee and a whole set of white blood cells are flowing to that area to solve your problem. That is inflammation. Does that sound like a bad thing, guys? Does that really sound like a bad thing? No, right? So don't ever think inflammation is a bad thing all the time. Now here are the key words, all the time, right? If that continues here too long, I mean, it's good that the white blood cells show up at that area, but it should only show up there for like 2-3 days. After that, when the job is done, don't you think it's time for the white blood cells to go back, like leave you alone, right? Well, inflammation is only bad when it lasts too long. Sometimes, and that's the type of inflammation they are talking about in those commercials. They're talking about when inflammation lasts too long, like the job done already, or the white blood cells just taking too long to do the job, right? And you see, when that happens, like when the white blood cells and the blood is constantly in that area for too long, it begins to damage the area. And that is when inflammation becomes bad, when it lasts too long. Okay, so get that concept out of your head, guys, that inflammation is not bad all the time. It's good, but too much of a good thing becomes what? A bad thing if it lasts too long. I want you all to take down the definition for inflammation, or the simple explanation. The white blood cells, and they also produce little chemicals. The chemicals help to heal you also. Take this down. Let me know when you are finished, right? Right. Remember, if you have a question, send the question. But if I could answer it, or if I have the time to answer it, I will. But, you know, just send the question. You don't have to ask me if you have a question. Just send it and hope I could, you know, do it. Right? So. Oh, no, some of you all are holding your head. Like, oh, more notes. All right. So let's talk. Anybody here suffers from asthma or has any family who suffers from asthma? The reason I had to discuss inflammation is because inflammation is one of the key components that can cause asthma to show up, right? Right. So a lot of people, and asthma is a pretty common condition, right? It's a common thing a lot of people suffer from, right? All right. So this here is the what you want to put at the top of your page, right? A circle in it here. This is the heading. So we're going to talk a little bit about asthma. So we all know asthma has something to do with breathing problems. To keep it simple, well, a person who's suffering from asthma, when they have an asthma attack, they can't breathe, they can't get the air into your lungs. Well, what do you think is most likely causing that? If this is your, well, I'm going to draw a human being here, right? So this is the person mouth, right? Now, we all know there's a tube from your mouth or your nose and it goes down into your lungs, right? This is supposed to be your lungs here, right? You see the pathway that allows air to go into your lungs? Doesn't it make sense that this pathway may become blocked? Does that make sense? That if air has trouble going down into your lungs, then the pathway may be partially blocked. Doesn't that make sense? All right. Now, what could make that swell? Like, what could cause the blocking? Like, the pathway might have bumps in it like this, so the air has problems squeezing through these openings. Do you think inflammation could have caused that? Like, if there's too much, remember we said inflammation is caused what? Swelling, right? So if there's inflammation inside the airways, it will cause the walls of the airways to swell. And when they swell too much, well, you know that's going to try to block any air going into your lungs, right? Everyone can imagine that the tubes itself get inflamed, swollen, hindering air from going into your lungs. And that is what asthma is, right? Asthma is caused by inflammation, and the inflammation causes the pathway to narrow, causing breathing difficulties, okay? So obviously when you have an asthma attack, you need something to reduce that inflammation instantaneously. Because I've never had asthma, right? But anybody here ever, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, that this might simulate what an asthma attack is. Have you ever had a dream like you were sleeping and you couldn't breathe? And even when you wake up, you still had problems breathing, like you can't get your head off the bed, and the dream is so intense that you're not breathing in the dream, and in real life, you're not breathing. I think a lot of people have experienced that, and I can only assume that is what asthma feels like when you're having an asthma attack. A scary feeling, right? Scary, scary, scary feeling, okay? Right. So, and of course, the sad part about it is that asthma is not completely understood. It's one of those, not mysteries, but it's still up in the air of what actually causes the inflammation in the lungs and whatnot itself, right? So, and that is what the second paragraph is basically trying to say, right? Right. And of course, things can trigger your asthma attack. For those who have asthma, by now you have a pretty good idea of what could trigger it. Like you don't go close to flowers and the pollen. The pollen, they might be allergic to it, and it just triggers this inflammation response in your how you say, in your lungs. Sometimes people who have asthma, they can't exercise because when they exercise, it triggers what? Inflammation, and they get an asthma attack, right? So that is what the second paragraph is talking about. Tell me something. Did I use the correct word here? The symptoms of asthma include shortness of breath, obviously, wheezing, chest pain, coughing. Are those things symptoms, or should I use the word signs? Did I make a mistake? Now, I'm always going to be throwing this at you guys. Like when I give you examples of symptoms and signs, tell me if I use the wrong term, because I'm going to try to trick you. Sometimes I use the wrong term on purpose, and I need for you all to correct me. I use the correct term. These are symptoms. These things cannot be directly measured. If you're wheezing, how are you going to measure wheezing? Look at chest tightness or pain. You can't measure that pain, right? Right? The coughing, well, I guess some people could argue with me on the coughing here, right? and say, well, he could count the amount of coughs per minute, right? So I guess he could fight more on this one. And I think did this one in a gray area, right? But saying that you have a shortness of breath, the doctor cannot physically understand how short that breath is, right? So I would go with symptoms. Some people are asking about what you need to like if you have an asthma attack, what you need to do, like what sort of medication. I'm sure you've seen people with asthma with these inhalers, like when they have these asthma attack, right? They do what? They put this inhaler in their mouth and take a deep breath, right? Well, let's see what medications they have for asthma, right? So sometimes they use steroids. I'm sure you have heard the word, right? Steroids, right? And there's also this drug. This is probably one of the most popular drugs out there. Remember the name, guys. Salbutamol, right? One time I had a real serious coughing problem, right? Even though I didn't have asthma, the doctor still recommended this because it could be used for serious coughing cases where your airways are inflamed, right? And most inhalers have this drug in it, okay? Right, and what it will do, it will reduce the inflammation. It will make the inflammation, go away. So when the inflammation goes away, well, the airways are now clear. There's no more swelling in it. And here are some ways you could deal with asthma. Like if you suffer from asthma, 4 things you should probably try to do. So that one is pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through that. Take down everything on the screen. Let me know when you are finished. Let's move on. Take a screenshot if you need to, right? Take a screenshot if you need to. Let's move on, right? Hey, I didn't realize so much time passed. You all know it's almost 11 o'clock. All right, guys, let's see this. I have to explain the homework I think to you guys. I think we did a lot today. Okay, guys, let's see this one. Oh, no, I think I made this one too easy. God. But let's see what the prize is at least. Hey, you can get your own magic lamp. But for each wish, you will cost you 2 fingers, and you cannot wish for the fingers back. Let's see what the thing is. So apparently the word is something that goes high. I don't know. Oh my God. I made this too easy. All right. Let's see if you all win the prize here. What is the word? Send it. Let's get your prize out of the way. All right, let's go.
Let us see what the jar of truth says.
And the word is fountain. I got you all. You all thought it was mountain. All right. I love tricking people. It makes me feel so good. All right. The word is fountain, and only 3 people said fountain, by the way, by my count here. So the people who said fountain, well done, right? You look at the word in a different way. You do not go with the crowd. You lead the crowd. That's always be whatever. All right. So guys, let me show you where to get all the slides, all the slides that we did today. I'm going to upload it, right? Let me show you where to upload it. By now, everyone should know the school website. I'm sending it back on the chat here, right? Just in case, right? I'm sending it 3 times. When you go to the school website, you're going to see this very, very simple website. You are going to click on Summer Classes 2023. That's all you have to do. This is the summer program. So everything regarding the summer program, you will find it there. When you click on it, scroll down and look for integrated science. Integrated science is where it's on a Sunday. So look for Sundays. You see integrated science and HSB. I will upload the class recording in the middle and the slides in this column here. It's going to be super easy to use, guys. Super easy to use. You think you all could remember that? You go to the school website, click on Summer Classes 2023 and scroll down, right? Great. And you're going to do me one small favor, guys. I always ask for 2 favors, right? We have plenty space in class. So if you know anybody who wants to join in, I'm willing to give up all the spaces for the people who didn't attend today. We have over 300, like from today's class, we have over 300 spaces left. So if you think today will be helpful to anybody, tell them WhatsApp us and say fish, okay? Also, please, just for coolness sake, because, you know, since I can't spell, the only way for me to be cool is to have plenty of subscribers on my channel, right? If you all could just subscribe to my channel or send any link, it will help me out quite a lot, all right? It's not monetized. It's just for being cool purposes. All right, guys, thank you for coming today. I hope you all learned a lot. And I think some of you all have social studies at 11:45. So enjoy your Sunday. See you all tomorrow for maths. Okay, make sure you do your homework for maths. For those who have maths class tomorrow. Yeah, I have a little speech to get subscribers. Yes, I do sound like a radio host. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Have a good one. And for the people on YouTube, thanks for coming. Thanks for being respectful on the chat. Bye. Right, for those, remember I would have provided a timetable, right? So check your parent. If your parents didn't give you the timetable, go and ask them for the timetable, right? It has all the times for all the classes. It's the same times every single week. So every Sunday you're coming out at 9 o'clock for integrated, right? But check your timetable with your parents, right? I would have given them this nice, colorful timetable, right? Just sit down with them and go through it, and you'll be fine. No, Andrew, I don't teach social studies. My wife teaches social studies. That's Miss Michelle, right? I could teach you social studies, but you will fail because I know nothing of social studies, but still willing to teach you if you want. Okay, we're Rich, Sylvester, I can't pronounce your first name, right? WhatsApp me and just say you lost the timetable on WhatsApp, right? This is my number here. And say you lost your messages or something like that, and you need back the timetable, okay? And I'll send you it.